Thank you, everyone, for joining today. My name is Gord Neal. I am the president and soon-to-be CEO of Domestic Metals. That announcement will come next week. I'm just going to go quickly through the presentation, and then we'll get into a discussion about the project and the company going forward. I will be making some forward-looking statements, so you should be aware of that. So, in summary, I don't want to really go spend a lot of time on the global copper supply. We know there's not enough. We know that there's problems in China. We know that the capacity for production capacity is down in South America and in Africa. So we need more copper. We just don't have enough. The Rio Tinto option agreement for the Smart Creek copper project. Rio owns 100% now, but they will wind up with 40% after we have our earn-in, and Domestic will have 60%. An important part of this part of the story is the Butte mine, which has produced 22 billion pounds of copper in Montana. It is 50 miles to the southeast of our Smart Creek project, and we have found that geologically it's in the same geological age, the same rocks, and the same formation. Rio Tinto did previous work on the Smart Creek project, and basically is handing it to Domestic on a silver platter. And I'll get into in our discussion why Rio has handed this off. They like it, but they're handing it off to a junior because they actually just can't deal with it right now. The target that we're looking for is a potential new large porphyry discovery. And as the geologists, both Rio and our geologists have told me, they will not be surprised if they make a major discovery in the tenor of the Butte mine on our project. We have an analog, according to Peter Bell of Canaccord, of the Hercules Metals, which is in Idaho, not far from us. And again, I'll touch on that in the presentation. Management has a history of adding significant value to economic discoveries. My background is the Juanicipio and Valdecañas discoveries at Mag Silver, which turned out to be great for shareholders, recently picked up by Pan American for $2.5 billion. And we are fully permitted with 36 holes and ready to drill. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Primary copper demand versus supply, we are just out of whack with that. And as a result of that is really the energy transition, not only with electric vehicles, has been primary, but now the AI component, artificial intelligence, and the amount of server farms that will be required, the amount of copper is just quite frankly staggering. Obviously, the deficit in the market has affected the price, and it is still climbing as of today. I think this is a little bit out of date, but long-term consensus still has copper, I believe, at around 480. I think it's trading around 530 today. This is important. This is in Montana. The government mandates for critical metals have been a driver of permitting and fast tracking projects in the United States. The last three administrations, the previous Trump administration, Biden, and the current Trump administration, have been pushing for critical metals production in the United States, and to prove that, a proof of that drive is. Recently, we had talked to the U.S. Forest Service about the permits that Rio Tinto had 36 holes permitted in Montana on our property, but they expired in December of 2024. If you know anything about the U.S. Forest Service, getting a permit in Arizona for a drill program can sometimes take as much as 5 to 7 years. And I said years. It's a long game. Our geologist, Dan MacNeil, went to the U.S. Forest Service when we found that these 36 holes had expired and called them and said, would you consider reinstating those holes and extending them for 2 more years? And they said yes. I've been doing this for 35 years. I have never known the Forest Service to just reinstate holes without environmental studies being done, all hoops and barrels. It just speaks to what the administration is doing in terms of fast tracking critical metals. Montana is a top tier mining jurisdiction. We produce 64 million pounds of copper annually, 4th in the U.S. in copper production, 6th in the Fraser Institute. As I mentioned before, the Butte mine, which is 50 miles to the southeast of our project, produced 22 billion pounds of copper. A lot of it in the early days was quite high grade, as high as 6% copper. And as I said before, the Smart Creek and Butte mines have the same geology, same age, and same rock types. On this map here, you can see there's a bunch of green dots. Those are copper occurrences. Again, tells you that the endowment in the western portion of Montana very highly endowed with copper. And you can see that we're in good company with Ivanhoe, Electric, Heddleston, Black Butte, which is a high-grade copper project in the center of Montana, Beaverton and Butte Mine, and we're at Smart Creek there, as I said, to the northeast of Butte. We also have permitting that's quite easy now in Montana, 14 days for patented claims for private land. Unpatented or BLM lands take 3 to 4 months. And the Forest Service lands usually in Montana take 4 to 6 months. But as I said, they given us permits for 36 holes immediately. I talked about the Hercules metal comparable. This came from, as I said, from Peter Bell at when we pitched Canaccord, and he looked at our Smart Creek project and he immediately said this is an analog for Hercules. Barrick put, I think, $12 million into Hercules, and to get 20% of the company. Sorry, that's wrong. It was $20 million to get 12% of the company. They have 275 million shares out with a market cap of 183 million. They're fifth ranked in Fraser Institute in Idaho. Their biggest intercept was 185 meters of 0.84, with including 45 meters of 1.94. On the analogous to that on our side is we have Rio Tinto as a partner. Now they're not putting cash in, but their program is driven toward getting the money for our project, for our option agreement into the ground so they can advance this. So it's Barrick, Hercules, Rio Domestic. We only have 34 million shares out. We have an $11 million market cap, which I believe, again, bodes well for us in terms of valuation and untapped value. We're ranked 6th in Montana. Our best intercept, which is a real hole of 109 meters of 0.75, which included 8 meters of 0.97 and 16 meters of 2.25. We're both using advanced exploration techniques through 3D mapping and leapfrog modeling, TerraSpect, etc. And the drilling activity, they have 308 holes, and they've drilled 5,005 meters in July, 7 holes completed and 5 currently in progress. We have 40 holes fully permitted for 36 holes for a 5,000 meter program, which will start at the end of February. Our highlights, as I said, this slide really sort of speaks to how we got a project. This is a big company project. We're looking for a major porphyry here, which can be expensive for small junior companies. But again, you have to remember, you don't really want to be first when you're coming into these projects trying to look for a porphyry. You really want to be the fourth, fifth, or sixth drill campaign to try to find the center of these porphyries. How did we get this project? It's a big project. You'll see in the next few slides. It's a big land position. We're looking for a big elephant here, and Rio was close to finding it, but their exploration money goes into their production facilities. They spend billions of dollars on their productions. They want to expand the life of mine of those. So most of their exploration goes to feeding their existing mills and expanding their life of mine in their current operations. That leaves them not a lot of money in their exploration budgets for going after these types of porphyries. So they came to our geologists, Dan MacNeil and Alan Wainwright, and said, we don't have the capacity to take this forward. Would you guys have a look at this and see if you have an interest? Alan and David and Daniel went to the project. They loved it. The only thing they didn't love was the fact that it was on U.S. Forest Service ground, and they went back to Rio and said, we love it, but we wouldn't really recommend taking it on because it's going to take us 5 to 7 years to permit. Rio turned back to them and said, no, you're thinking of Arizona and Nevada. And this is where Daniel and Alan had worked previously with Rio, so they have a history of working together. They know they're porphyry experts. And so they told them that the U.S. Forest Service in Montana is different than the Arizona or the Nevada or New Mexico USFC, UFSS, FS, and it only takes 4 to 6 months to get a drill permit in these regions. And so they said, okay, we'll take it on. And so that's why, and Rio had done a lot of drilling. Rio drilled 26 of the 40 holes that are on the project, and basically are handing this to us on a silver platter. That gave us a large amount of exploration data, which we can leverage toward the new discovery. As I said earlier, the best drill intercept is 109 meters, of 0.75. Also, as I said earlier, we are the sixth person to drill on this property, which is what you want to be. You don't want to be the first person to leave it for the next person. We were very close to being able to making this major discovery. Now, Smart Creek was also the Sunrise mine area in the Smart Creek project. Was a past producer. Between 1800 and 1900, it produced 12,000 ounces of gold, 12,500 ounces of gold at 6 grams gold, 31 grams silver, and more importantly for us, 1.5% copper, which is bodes well for what we're looking for. This is a very busy slide, and so I'll go through it fairly quickly. But you can see the top 3 holes. SMC R000. 0022 is the feature hole or the highlight hole that Rio drilled at 109 meters of 0.75 and 80 meters of 0.96, 16 at 2.25. But what this table represents is drilling and trenching, which shows that these numbers all have anomalous copper values in them. And some of them are a little lower than others as you go down the slide, but it does tell you that you're vectoring toward, as you look from the back end of the slide to the top left of the slide. You'll see that the copper grades get higher and higher. So you're vectoring toward these would all be distal signatures of a porphyry outside of the center. So we are marching toward the center of a porphyry with these kinds of numbers. We have 4 targets on this project. First thing you should look at is the scale bar. It's a large project. The 1 kilometer square makes it about a 12 kilometer by 10 kilometer land package. The targets, the 4 primary targets, and I'll use my cursor here, as you can see my arrow, are the Smart Creek PCD target, the Smart Creek Exotic project in the east. In the west is the Sunrise Mine CRD or carbonate replacement deposit target, and the Radio Tower porphyry copper deposit target. So these are the main targets on the area. You can see in this area, these are the green ones, are the samples, the copper soil samples that have been taken. The big polygons here, these purple polygons that are in the east and the west through the targets, are actually alteration footprints. For a copper porphyry, you need large alteration footprints, and these are kilometers long alteration footprints. And you can see that the magnetic, the big blue polygon underneath is another signature feature of a porphyry. The drill program that we're looking at here is 6 holes, 1,500 meters at Smart Creek PCD, 2 holes of 1,000 meters at Sunrise, and 2 holes of 1,000 meters at Radio Tower. And as I said, we have 36 holes that are permitted now. This is the exploration model. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this. This is more geologically based, but you can tell that we're looking at these money signs are where we're targeting in the in the Sunrise porphyry target where the old mine was. This is the Smart Creek porphyry target that we're looking for, and this is the Helena formation that was originally drilled at the Smart Creek. This is the drill holes that were at the Smart Creek Exotic area, and they were analogous. The mine is analogous to the Bisbee mine in Arizona. This is the IP that Rio Tinto did. It was not complete. I'm not sure why they didn't complete it, but you can see here that these induced polarization areas, these high chargeability areas, these red areas, are where the copper, where the high chargeabilities here are at Sunrise, the Sunrise mine target, and the radio target here, the radio tower target here. These dotted lines represent what we think we can fill in with geophysics. And if it is an anomaly that runs through this dotted line, again, this is a cartoon analogy of what we hope will happen. That'll give us a very large target for us in the western part of this target area. In the east, these orange drill holes were Rio Tinto drilled in the Smart Creek Exotic and the Smart Creek PCD target. You can see this red area right here, this chargeability high from their IP survey. You can see these two holes here were the last holes that were drilled. Water came out of those, but they never got in to this high chargeability area. That's why we're saying this has basically been handed to us on a silver platter. The drill program moved from southeast here to northwest. They marched this way. There was, in this exotic area, there is a lot of copper on surface. So they started here, moved in this direction, finished here, but never ever drilled this chargeability high right here, which is a focus for us. And in this area, it's a focus for us as well. Our plan is to we've done geochemistry, and our geochemistry is telling us that there is a coincidence of high moly here in this area, and that should give us, if we run geophysics in here, we're looking at this area. Plus, Alan and Dan did some work and found some field work and found a porphyry dike sticking out of the ground right here. It had gold in it, and I'll show you that in a second. Copper was leached out, but coincident with the geophysics being targeting this area, we're going to do, the geochemistry giving us a high probability in this area. Geophysics, we hope, will light this area up, and this would be a high area of probability for target for a porphyry in this area. Again, this is this area here, which is the Smart Creek target is here. The radio tower target is here, and this is for scale. These are 250 meter blocks. So this is basically a kilometer of chargeability here, and almost the same at radio tower. So we're dealing with big alteration footprints and big signatures. Again, this mineralization, this is porphyry seed in the high grade Smart Creek area, the Sunrise Mine area. This is in the exotic area. This malachite is all over the ground in the Smart Creek exotic area. This is the high grade drill core that was taken out at Smart Creek itself, the CRD or the PCD area. This is the epithermal gold sample that was taken from the Sunrise area that gave 4.25 grams gold. And this is the skarn in the radio tower. Land access, you have the patented lands, which are private lands in here, which we can drill with a week. We can get a permit for those in a week, 14 days. The BLM lands, which is the white area here, we can get in 2 to 4 months, and 4 to 6 months is the rest of this Forest Service area, U.S. Forest Service area, which we have 36 holes for, and we'll get those holes plotted once we've done our geophysics. Infrastructure, you can see the road runs right through the property. There's water and power on site. This is the old adit from the Sunrise Mine. That should say 7,000 feet instead of 700. There's zero missing. There's an adit that runs, up this hill. And this is it this is the Sunrise working basically from a distance. But there is infrastructure and roads on site. On the exploration budget, we've got pre-drill geophysics. We've done mapping and sampling and terraspec sampling. We've got that back. We've got all of that back now. Carbonate and calcite UV sampling is ongoing. UV evaluation is ongoing. Petrographic work is ongoing. Leapfrog modeling is always ongoing. Target site evaluation as we get the the results from the field work, we will adjust our targets, and from the geophysics, we will tighten up our targets. We are planning, as I said, in January to do induced polarization and magnetic telormics on the project. So MIP and MT will be done January, February. We'll get our results late February, start drilling late February, early March, and have the results in April, May, and the total amount for the drilling of 5,000 meters is 2,875,000. The deal that we struck with Rio is they own it 100% now. We spend $3,100,000 US in the ground over 4 years to get 60%. They do have a clawback provision here. If they like the project and we advance it properly, they could claw it back and take 60. Our thoughts on that is if Rio actually does exercise on a 20% clawback to give themselves 60%, we would probably have to show them north of 5 billion pounds of high grade copper, which would put the company in a much different place from a market cap and a value position. So it would be a good thing for shareholders if they actually exercise the 20% clawback. There is a 2% NSR on the Sunrise mine area, which could be bought down to 1%. My background is I was a founding member of Mag Silver, was VP Corporate Development there between 2003 and 2013, 14. I left there and when it was going into production and became VP Corporate Development of Silver Corp to learn the production side rather than the exploration side of the business. Refang sent me over to China for a few months and I learned the production of his Ying mine. When I came back, worked for him as VP Corp Dev for a year and a half. He found a deposit in Bolivia called the Silver Sand Deposit and the Carangas Deposit. Couldn't run that. He put that inside of New Pacific Metals. Couldn't run both companies. Made me president of New Pacific Metals, and essentially I ran that company for 7 years. Took Mag from 50 million to 2.5 billion. Took New Pacific from 100 million to 1.2 billion in my tenure there, and I've raised I'm sure north of 750 million for each of those companies. As I was saying, so Stuart Ross is our CFO. Stuart actually was a founder of a company in Canada called Clearly Canadian, which was a massive success story in the 80s and 90s. And it was, I think it rose to a $5 billion company in Canada. And he was one of the founders and the CFO of that company. His ability to be able to not only handle audits and our financials, but also to read and understand contracts and keep us in line on our expenditures, what we have and what we can do, he's probably the one of the best. He is the best CFO I've ever worked with. Dan MacNeil is a porphyry specialist. He's worked with Rio in the past, so is Alan Rainwick. They both are porphyry specialists. Dan worked on the discovery of SK Creek and the Donlin Creek and Round Martin in USA. Both of them have a focus on porphyries in the central and southwest United States. They've made major discoveries there, and they've helped companies like Teck and Rio and BHP in their discoveries, and they're well respected by those larger corporations. That's how we got access to the project in the first place. The board of directors, Pat Veris, who I took the CEO seat from recently, he was recently CEO. He stepped aside. He's now the CEO of a potash company, but he's still the chairman of domestic metals. He was the CEO of Western Potash. He's going back into that space again, and he was involved in the discovery of the Diavik diamond mine in the Yukon. Hank Van Alphen is a director, and he Hank has been in the mining business for 40 years. He is one of the person who brings these kinds of projects to the junior mining space. He was with founder of Cardero Resources, Corriente, and he sold an iron ore project to the Chinese for $100 million. He's raised over $800 million for the sector. John Sharon's been on the board since 2016. He's based in BC, but he is focused really on corporate governance. One of the key attributes of John is that he went to the University of Montana, knows the governor of Montana, and on my next trip down to Montana, will be setting me up with a meeting with the governor. Important to get those political connections and that socialization with the state and the state legislature. As word goes back from the governor's mansion or from the governor's seat to the White House, and he has a direct link to the White House to let them know what we are doing at Smart Creek Sunrise. David Reed is the largest shareholder of Domestic Metals. He is a lawyer. He works for DLA Piper. He is also our corporate counsel. He has done a lot of work in natural resources and securities law in the mining space. He was also with Far West, associated with Far West Mining, with Pat Veris, and they sold Far West to Capstone in 2011 for $1.1 billion. I've already gone through my resume. So on the share structure side, we have 48 million shares outstanding after the last financing. Insiders have dropped from 22% to 16%. We're getting more outsiders coming in, and I'm looking for institutional involvement once we move this to the right market cap level, which is about anywhere between 75 million and 100 million. I have a history of bringing in institutions. Warrants are 17 million, and we have outstanding options of 2 million. So fully diluted at 67 million. Again, just to recap, we need more copper. We're not finding enough. We don't have enough coming online. Rio Tinto is a great partner to have. They will eventually have 40%. We will have 60%. The Butte mine is an important mine in this space in Montana. 22 billion pounds produced in the last 100 years. Same age, same rocks and same geology as our Smart Creek project. They have done the drilling and given us enough data so that basically they're handing it to us on the silver platter. We are the sixth operator, so we're hoping that in the first 3 to 4 holes we hit the center of the porphyry. It is a large porphyry we're looking for. We're an analog to Hercules Metals. Management does have a history of adding significant value on these kinds of economic discoveries, and we are fully permitted with 36 holes. So I thank you for your time, and I can be reached at Neal at domesticmetals.com via email, and I will also take direct calls or texts at my phone number at 604-657-7813. Thank you.
You already introduced yourself and talked about your career in the presentation. So I guess my question would be, what made you join Domestic Metals, and what are your key objectives as CEO?
I joined Domestic Metals mainly because of Hank Van Alphen. Hank Van Alphen and Dan MacNeil. I was recently the CEO of World Copper. We sold our Arizona asset, our primary asset, to a group that is associated with Hud Bay, and that just happened recently. So they knew I was stepping away from that company because it no longer had an asset, and both of them came to me and said, "We have a Rio Tinto opportunity. Have a look at it and tell us whether you're interested. We'd like to see if you're interested in taking the reins." And once Dan explained to me that the geology, as I say, the geology is important. Without good geology, the Mag Silver and the New Pacific transactions or companies that I work for wouldn't be as valuable as they are today. So I was really intrigued by the geology and the fact that Rio was a partner in this, and so I accepted the the invitation.
By the way, so you just joined. What's your equity position? Common shares, options, any other incentive units?
Yeah, I just joined recently. I am being granted 2 million options to start. They want to get me a significant position, a meaningful position, so that I'm incentivized. So we are looking at getting me 2 million shares of the company. I'll be buying some of those, and some of those will come through other means. But primarily, I'll be taking a 2 million share position in the company.
Could you give us some sense, overview of the history of domestic metals? Did this company exist before, and when exactly did Dan came in and bring in the asset?
Yeah, so it was previously a company called Norden Metals, and the focus was actually Sweden. They had a couple of projects in Sweden, and but they didn't pan out. Again, the risk we take in this business of resource investing, particularly in the exploration stage and the junior stages, the geologists tell you that all the signatures and all the tests and all the data sets tell them that there is something significant undercover or even exposed at surface. The drilling is how you verify that, and sometimes, a lot of the time, it doesn't work. A lot of the time, the risk we take is that you drill it and it's not there. In my experience in this business, I've been quite fortunate that the geologists that have offered me projects are geologists that have had multiple discoveries in multiple jurisdictions, and that's who you want to tie your horse to. So the Norden failure, I'm hoping will not happen with our drill campaign here, but it was Dan MacNeil who was approached by Rio in 2024 with the Smart Creek opportunity that brought it into this office here where Hank Van Alphen resides. And Hank, and so I believe it was they looked, Alan and Dan went to look at it in late 2024. So it would have been September, October. And they decided to pull the trigger in January, February of 2025. So the asset's only been inside of Norden, which changed its name to Domestic. I think it was March or April of this year, and that's when the asset came in.
So, Gord, could you tell us about what the financial position?
Well, the financial position of the company is we raised in December. We announced that we raised, I believe, $4 million in total, and we had some previous accounts payable from the company's been around for 4 or 5 years, and there was some bills owing. So a lot of that, and I was a little surprised, to be honest, at my legal bill after 3 years. Now I just picked up the company 6 months ago. What I'm trying to say is, we're down to about one from the four. We're down to about 175 million eight, $2 million Canadian. From the four. It goes very quickly when you're paying past bills. The good upshot of that is this: we in January we put out those field sample numbers, which as I quoted in the news release, these are the highest sample numbers I've ever seen in my 35 years in this business. 100 grams per ton gold, 102 grams per ton gold at surface with 23% copper and 38 grams per ton silver they're off the charts. I mean, I even ran them by Peter Megaw, and Peter said, well, those are quite high. He said, it looks to him like we might be into a CRD scenario. The reason I preempt the question with that information is, we've been approached by a couple of funds that want to invest in domestic metals. So my mantra is, first of all, when you get those kinds of numbers at surface, we have a 5,000 meter 6-hole program planned. I've gone back to the board after the geologists have, with the Geological, Rio, and our internal geologists, we had a conversation, and we're going to double the drill program to 12 holes, 10,000 meters, and that's going to require more capital. Now, I don't want to dilute. I want to minimize dilution as much as I can, which means either getting the price up higher and doing a raise at a higher price or slightly higher price. But if we want to double the drill program, we're going to have to take the money that's being offered. Now, there's quite a bit of money being offered, and I wouldn't take all of it. But I'm saying that if you want to double, if you want to give your geologist the best chance to make the major discovery on numbers like we've had at surface, then I got to give them a bit more runway, which means I'm probably going to take another $2 to $3 million that's being offered. I'm being offered five, but at five is at 33 cents is highly dilutive. I would rather do it. I'd rather get through the drill program, which will start in March, and double the drill program, which will go to April, May, and then get results out in May, June.
And what's the quarterly G&A spend?
Yeah, the G&A spend is about $100,000, $90,000 a month. So that's not quarterly. So 270, maybe $300,000 a quarter, something like that.
And your warrants, what are the strike price on those, expiry dates?
We have 1.6 million warrants at 33 cents with an expiry of August 2028. And we have 15 million warrants at 40 cents of the expiry of November 2028, and those are the most recent ones.
Who are your core shareholders?
We don't have any, as I said at the end of my presentation, we don't really have any institutional shareholders. The core shareholders are the largest shareholder, which is David Reed. We've got Ross Beatty as a shareholder. We have Terry Salmon as a shareholder. Some of the bigger players. We don't have any institutions, and I have an institutional history of bringing institutions into these projects. However, at 12 million dollar market cap, most of my institutions, Fidelity, etc., and Sprott can't play at these levels. So I have to get it. I have to move it with a major discovery. I can get it to the place. I can get it to the $75-100 million market cap, I think, fairly easily. If what they're telling me is true, if what the geologists say, which is they wouldn't be surprised if we've already got 100 meters of 0.75. They're not going to be surprised. 80 meters of 1%. If we pull 100 to 125 meters of 1.5% copper, we will not be a $12 million market cap company for very long. That's when I can bring in institutions. But at this particular time, we don't have any major institutions.
The landholder situation all here is U.S. forestry land.
The land ownership is, we have some patented lands, as I showed you in the presentation. The dark gray areas are private lands that we own. There is some BLM lands, which is the whitish area, mainly to the north of the property. The northern 25% of the property is Bureau of Land Management lands, and the rest, which is the southern 2/3, 3/4 of the project, is United States Forest Service land.
And could you give us some sense of the infrastructure here, with regards to, how do you get on site, roads, power?
Yeah, the closest town is Phillipsburg, which is about 5 kilometers directly east of the project, sort of southeast. The largest town close by is Butte, Montana, where the Butte mine is, and it's 50 miles southeast from the project. The road, you can drive right into the project. It's farmland. It's not indigenous land or Aboriginal land. So the native Indians aren't staking a claim on it. It's owned by farmers. They're very amenable to us using it, as long as we don't disturb their their cattle, and there's enough water for both our project and for drilling and for their cattle. And the road leads right through to the mine, to the Sunrise mine. So there's a road that goes right through it, and there's power on site.
Okay, so thank you for being here today, Dan.
Happy to be here.
So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and give about your background, how you got involved with domestic metals?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. First and foremost, I'm an exploration geologist. I've got about 25 years of relevant exploration experience in the industry. Cut my teeth with Anglo American, did a 3-year run there, moved on to Barrick Gold and did an 8-year run there. They sponsored a master's degree at the Mineral Deposit Research Unit at the University of British Columbia. And then I suppose after working for Barrick for those 8 years, I jumped into the junior sector and operated in the capacity of VPX for a number of junior companies before starting a geological consultancy called Vector Geological Solutions, and I've been running that since 2016. My sort of involvement with domestic goes back to the project. Smart Creek. I was able to identify the Smart Creek project and bring it to the company.
Could you explain the logic setting of Smart Creek, and also, is this a porphyry in a porphyry belt, and what surrounding deposits types do you have?
All right, so I suppose the geological setting for the Smart Creek project is broadly similar to that of the Butte project. And note that that's 5.2 billion tons of 0.6% copper. The Sunrise and Smart Creek together reside on the northwest margin of the Boulder batholith. This is broadly speaking, the same age as the mineralization at Butte, and based on an array of sort of geological aspects that we'll get into later, it has a similar potential.
Let's move into Smart Creek, and then maybe you could just give us an overview of the geologic properties and you have 4 zones.
Okay, so the Smart Creek project is quite a large exploration project by U.S. standards. Note the scale bar in the lower left on this project outline map. The foundational geology of Smart Creek really is dominated by the Helena Formation. These are rocks that are much older than the age of the porphyries we're after. But the key with the Helena Formation is that it is carbonate rich. And of course, being carbonate rich, that is what we call a reactive sort of host rock. And what I mean by reactive host rocks is that when the magmatic fluids that carry copper to the surface, when they encounter formations like the Helena, they tend to drop their copper loads, and that gives us the potential for wonderful grades. So what you see on the map in front of us is a blue dashed outline. That's the distribution of the carbonate rocks in the Helena Formation, and those reactive sort of layers in that formation. Now, what you're seeing in the purple dash lines really constitute alteration footprints. We've got one at the Smart Creek target area on the eastern part of the land position, and then a very large one at the western side of the land position. And it's important to have a large alteration footprint because large alteration footprints at least have the potential to host large ore bodies. So you want to see that as a minimum. So I guess to summarize, we've got favorable reactive host rocks that are older than the age of intrusions. That age, incidentally, is about 66 million years. And then we have large alteration footprints. Added on top of that, we've got a very good copper signal shown in the surface soil samples. Those are shown in those green bubble plots, and also in surface rock sampling, and also in historic workings, mines, and adits, which cover most of this property. So taken together, the Smart Creek project has favorable host rocks, reactive host rocks, big alteration footprint, good copper response from both soils and rocks. And this is why fundamentally we're excited about the project.
The intrusion itself, I mean, or are there several events of intrusions here? Is that mineralized, or do you think, or is that your hypothesis?
Yes. So the intrusions that we have evidence for both at Smart Creek and at Sunrise are altered and variably mineralized. At the Smart Creek prospect, we see quite abundant copper mineralization. Part of the best intercept on the property, that 109 meters of 0.75, is in altered and mineralized intrusion. Now, on the western side of the property at Sunrise, we see quartz feldspar porphyry intrusions that are intensely quartz sericite pyrite altered, and they contain quite high gold grades at surface. Now, the reason they contain high gold grades is probably an effect of the strength of the magmatic hydrothermal system responsible for the mineralization there. But we know we're high level in an idealized porphyry system, and the highest levels of these porphyry systems tend to be leached. And what I mean by leached is that near the top or roof of these systems, acid solutions dissolve the copper and transport it elsewhere, leaving behind gold, which is insoluble. So we fully expect that these mineralized porphyry intrusions that are gold rich or comparatively gold rich at Sunrise will transition to copper bearing intrusions as we drill deeper.
I guess if we start with Smart Creek PCD, so the mineralization that you hit, that's on surface, 110 meters of 0.75% copper and also a quite good silver grades. Is that a porphyry, or what is the actual mineralization there, and how do you interpret that?
Yeah, so what's been defined or drilled at Smart Creek is certainly a porphyry. Now, porphyry deposits, in a general sense, have a sort of crude zonation. The distal parts of them we'd expect to have lower temperature quartz sericite pyrite or even chlorite alteration. As you get closer, you start to see the addition of more secondary biotite, more potassium feldspar, more silica, and of course copper. So what Rio Tinto and others have found in the past at Smart Creek is sort of distal alterations assemblages, but they contain quite a lot of copper. Now, porphyries have a specific type of vein that we call a B vein. These are straight-walled quartz veins that can contain chalcopyrite, boronite, and in some cases molybdenite. We do have numerous instances of these B veins, but drilling here has yet to encounter a B vein stockwork. So this sort of leads us to believe that the center of the system, if you like, has not been intersected by drilling at this time. And of course, that is the objective of domestic metals here with this project, is to target that sort of environment specifically and of course make a discovery.
Could you walk us through the historic drilling that you have and how to interpret that, and how that fits into the context of your hypothesis?
Sure. Okay, so this map shows the distribution of a historic drilling. Those drill holes are shown in orange. Those are Rio Tinto holes. There are 32 of them. And then Bear Creek drilled 5 holes. And then there's sort of 5 holes across the property that we don't have much data for. Now, Rio Tinto initially started drilling in what we call the Smart Creek exotic copper target. What that is a bunch of remobilized copper that has been deposited on fracture surfaces and in faults. And that consists of copper oxides, including chrysocolla and malachite, and in some cases there is azurite. But Rio Tinto really was interested in seeing if there was a porphyry underneath that volume of copper oxide mineralization. And in drilling that, they learned that there was not. But they did see the distal alteration signal of a porphyry. And that led them to follow an alteration vector to the northwest, successfully drilling higher and higher temperature alteration as they marched northwestward, up until the point of these last 2 holes. I think you can see my cursor. These 2 holes were drilled in 2022, and both made quite a lot of water. And Rio Tinto abandoned these holes despite seeing increasing alteration and evidence for porphyry mineralization.
Where's the 110 meters? Where's that located?
That is located right in here. Okay, so Rio Tinto, they were nervous that the holes made water, and because part of the plan of operations permit for this part of Montana would be impacted negatively by holes making a lot of water, they shut both down. And after 2022, Rio Tinto did not drill the project again. So really, the challenge for domestic is to find a drill contractor with sufficient experience to manage artesian water and keep the permit in check. Now, uh, a good drill contractor is highly capable of managing this problem, provided they are aware of it at first. So, domestic copper will remove this risk element from the exploration of this project by bringing in an experienced drill contractor who can work with this particular issue.
Should there be more water as you go deeper?
Not necessarily, but it's hard to know until you do it. So I think we'll just be prepared for this hole to make water, and basically, uh, the challenge will be to find the level that the water originates, and then cement around that interval.
And so the headline hole here, is that in oxides, are you saying, or
Yeah, so based on the visual inspection of that drill core as well as the chemistry, it starts in dominantly oxides. There are still some sulfides, and then transitions to a mixed oxide sulfide zone, and then finally purely sulfide.
so with that, how are you going to? I mean, you also have some. You have quite a few other holes here. Some of them are most, they are lower grade, but there are still some of them are, probably could be over grade for an open pit. Um, are these in the? Are you saying that these are not in the actual target itself?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're getting at. So I would say that all of the holes drilled to date on this property, including the ones at Smart Creek, have not hit what I would call the center or the best mineralization that exists in the system. So, uh, I think what happened in hole 22 is that Rio Tinto drilled down or close to a mineralized dike. And you can imagine a dike spalling off the main porphyry. This tends to translate, uh, higher temperature, better mineralization outside of the main part of the system. So it can, despite this intercept looking very good, I think we can safely say that is not the target that we are after. We're looking for the place that this dike came from, in a sense.
That is the hypogene porphyry.
That's right. So
Could you showcase? Do you have
really,
any a graph or intersection, any geophysics or any hypothesis of where it is and that you can showcase?
yeah. So note where these holes that Rio Tinto stopped drilling exist, and I'm going to advance to. So we're looking at the same map, same scale bar, and the two holes that Rio Tinto were unable to finish occur right here, right at the edge of this chargeability feature. And that's significant because porphyry mineralization is intimately associated with the generation of sulfides, both in a sort of external pyrite shell and an internal, ideally chalcopyrite rich shell. So this is the sort of, in all the search ellipse at Smart Creek, this is one of our favorite places to find the prize that we're looking for, and that is to test this chargeability feature. Note again, the scale bar down here is 1 kilometer. At the property scale, this uh, chargeability feature does not look large, but if we flip to this in cross section, we see what this looks like. And note that each square here is 250 meters. So this notionally dovetails with what I mentioned previously, that we've got a big alteration footprint, a lot of reactive favorable host rocks, large copper anomalies in soil and rocks at surface, and a large geophysical feature at depth to test. So all those things together really sort of set the story for why we're so interested in drilling at Smart Creek. And really what we want to do is finish the job that Rio Tinto started.
At what depth do you expect that the hypogene zones to start?
It's tough to say. I mean, we planned drilling, assuming that we would have to drill 600-meter holes, but we don't have enough data at this point in time to guess where the mineralization might start. So when we're thinking about how deep to drill or to plan drilling, we have to assume that we're looking for a system that's 100 to 200 meters thick. And since we don't know where that will start, we must plan for 500 or 600-meter holes.
Do you view this as a conceptually an open pit or underground target?
I don't. I would like to be able to answer that, but we just don't have enough information to go on. Of course, it all comes down to how deep the mineralization starts. So, open pits are not that forgiving in terms of how close they need to be, or mineralization needs to be to the surface to make a pit. So, I would expect. Actually, I just can't say.
Do you expect any other metals besides copper at Smart Creek?
Yeah, so in the system there is appreciable molybdenite and some silver. So those, if we were successful in making a discovery here, I would expect, one or some combination of those metals could be payable.
And if you make a discovery here, I mean, based on what you know on the alteration in geophysics and also geochem, what is the scale potential? Is the target itself enough to theoretically be able to host 500 million tons?
I think so. I mean, the project itself has the right sort of geological architecture, including those reactive host rocks, to form something quite special. And we know that the Butte deposit is over 1 billion tons. So we know that these rocks are capable of producing very large porphyry copper ore bodies. So I don't know if I would be willing to cap it at anything less than Butte at this time.
2 holes, 1,500 meters. Obviously, the more you drill, the better. But do you consider that to be sufficient to really, if it's there, you should have a good shot at hitting it?
Yeah, I think so, because we just spoke about what the potential for the project is, and that requires quite a large volume of altered and mineralized host rock. So if we test the remaining geophysical feature at Smart Creek with 2 holes, we should know all about the potential after that.
In terms of, is there any other target generational work or geophysics that you would like to do before drilling Smart Creek?
There is, yeah. So I think we're considering 2 geophysical methods, and in fact, it looks like we're going to be able to get some surveys done in Q1 of 2026. And what we want to do is to expand on the distribution of IP data that we have for the project. We want to infill some of these holes to get a more accurate picture of what's happening at depth. And then we want to add some MT. And the MT geophysics is important for us because it sees far deeper than the IP. And we're hopeful that this method allows us to sort of image the magmatic roots to the system at Smart Creek. So those 2 methods together, dovetailed, of course, with the surface program we ran this summer, will sort of de-risk the holes that we drill after the geophysics is completed.
So now, with the results from the last year's field program, could you explain your 4 targets, what you understand on them, and also how the results changes your geological interpretation?
So maybe just to start from the property scale here, we ran a 40-day mapping, sampling, and prospecting program at Smart Creek, all designed to sort of increase our confidence in individual areas of the original targets that we were interested in. Now, we were able to sort of gain some critical confidence in specific areas, but the mapping and the sampling covered broader parts of each of the targets, and was ultimately quite successful in identifying new mineralization in many cases, particularly around Sunrise and Radio Tower. Those are the westernmost targets on the property. What we found in these areas is sort of widespread, quite high grade in some cases, carbonate replacement, copper and gold mineralization. Now, carbonate replacement style mineralization can be found in the distal porphyry copper gold setting. And I think that's what we have here. So in the Smart Creek and Radio Tower targets, the newly identified mineralization allowed us to expand each of the target blocks from the sort of pre-field program time, which is good because we have more targets to investigate and follow up. Now, the Smart Creek proper target more or less stayed the same. We're following up on a compelling porphyry target that Rio Tinto identified in the northwest part of Smart Creek proper, and that remains the same. But some interesting results came out of the Smart Creek exotic copper target. Previous to the field program, we felt that most of the mineralization in the Smart Creek exotic copper target was mineralization that had been moved in from elsewhere. But what we found is quite high-grade copper that was associated with robust gold and silver values, also some molybdenum values. And the interpretation we've imposed on these data is that not all of the copper mineralization that we see at the exotic copper target has been transported from elsewhere. So we sort of renewed our interest in this target for a pure porphyry copper exploration target, which is quite exciting. So I guess stated a little bit differently, if the Smart Creek exotic copper mineralization only produced copper with no other elements of interest, we would have said, okay, fine. The mineralization that we're seeing here has been transported from elsewhere and deposited in this area. But because we're seeing really encouraging silver signals, in some cases quite high grade, and gold, that means that the mineralization that we're seeing formed here and makes this target therefore prospective for porphyry copper. Now, there is a fair bit of historical drilling in this area, so we're now focused predominantly in the southwestern portion of this target box, where historic drilling didn't do much to test some of the geological and geophysical features that we see there.
The silver results are also, especially in Radio Tower and Smart Creek, quite spectacular. What is driving that?
This is a feature of carbonate replacement systems. So one of the key reasons why Domestic is so keenly interested in exploring Smart Creek is because of the foundational geology. The Helena Formation here, shown in blue on this map, contains a lot of carbonate, which is limestone. Now this carbonate has been metamorphosed and is now marble. But marble is what we call a reactive host rock. So when the hydrothermal fluids containing gold and copper that are ultimately related to a porphyry touch these reactive host rocks, they tend to drop their metal content and can produce spectacularly high grades. So those of us in the porphyry copper exploration space look the world over for porphyry projects that have limestone in the sort of stratigraphic pile, because we know full well that when these systems, or when a porphyry system overlaps or is superimposed into carbonate units, that is limestone and marble, you do have the potential for wonderfully high grades. And that's exactly what we're seeing at Smart Creek. So really, it's sort of a good base case for metal endowment, but it allows us to dovetail the porphyry copper exploration with some higher grade or high grade plums that occur distal to porphyry systems in the CRD environment.
Excellent. So, how does this change your? I mean, you're going to drill 9,000 meters. Preliminary. How are you thinking about allocating the meters?
Yeah, so because we've had to expand our target boxes, we felt that we would expand the total number of drill meters on the project, and that's simply an artifact of us having a very successful surface sampling program and identifying a lot more mineralization. So, in mineral exploration, you're always trying to run a fine line between uh, data density and how much confidence you have in each target. So I think, the domestic metals management really wanted to see more meters deployed out here to give the company a better chance at cutting into something that's worth follow-up drilling on the project.
What does the target prioritization look like? Where do you start? Which target will most likely get most meters?
So I suppose when we first optioned Smart Creek, we were keenly interested in finishing the job that Rio Tinto did at the Smart Creek target proper. They left a sort of a compelling part of the target more or less untested, that is the northwest. And there's a sort of a no-brainer porphyry test to be put in there. And that was our favorite until we stumbled across outcropping porphyry mineralization at Sunrise. And that gave us an explanation for the historically mined epithermal regime mineralization at the Sunrise mine proper. And then we kept recovering very high grades in and around Sunrise at surface. And all of the geological observations are pointing us in the direction to a deeper porphyry copper system there. So I think you're going to see domestic focus quite heavily on Sunrise. Also, the radio tower target is producing some very, very interesting high-grade material in gold and silver in the CRD realm there. That's ultimately probably driven by a porphyry system. So I think, unlike Rio Tinto, most of our drill deployment will go into Sunrise and radio tower. However, we will go back and finish the drill pattern that Rio Tinto started at Smart Creek.
Smart Creek exotic. Do you think that will get any hole, or is that probably not?
It may. The Smart Creek exotic copper target wasn't a high priority for us until quite recently. So I think what we need to do with this particular target is to go back in on the ground and try to understand a little bit better the geological architecture there, especially in the context of the historic drilling. So I think that would be the lowest priority for now, but that's not to say with a bit more understanding, we wouldn't go back and drill some holes there.
And has this changed your view on the size of the price here, or what do you think the size of the price could be? It's a cheeky question, but
yeah, not at all. I think it's if anything, it's increased our confidence that a very large tonnage porphyry system can be here. Finding more metal at surface, especially dizzyingly high grades, that is a very strong positive check mark for the project, and ultimately its upside exploration potential.
excellent. So how does the clawback right work?
They could exercise. They can exercise the 20%. They'll wind up with 40%. We'll wind up with 60% after spending $3,150,000 US in the ground on the project over 4 years. They'll wind up with 40. We'll wind up with 60. But if we do pull the meterage and the grade that I mentioned earlier, high grade, then I believe the value of the company will skyrocket. I believe we will run, as I have in the past with MAG and with New Pacific, 4 or 5 drills at the same time. if you can add, if at the end of a 3 or 4 year period, we had 5 billion pounds of high grade copper, that would be when I would expect they might pull the trigger on a clawback
But
on
do
the
they
20.
pay for that, or how does it
Yes,
work?
they
Or they
do.
just get
They pay double our exploration expenditures. So if I've got 4 and 5, you could imagine. First of all, if they're going to actually exercise a 20% clawback, they've got to have a very significant a sure resource, a de-risked resource that they're going to do that on. Now, and if it's de-risked and it's large, if it's five, and I'm saying it's got to be some significant number. I'm using my own number, but it should be north of 5 billion pounds of copper. If we're a 5 billion pound copper company in 3 to 4 years, 5 years, the market cap is going to be large. Shareholders will be well taken care of, and yes, the Rio will pay double what our exploration costs would be, and those would be in the significant. It would be I can't give you a number, but it's gonna
yeah, but
be
it'd probably be a few tens
yeah, tens
of
of
million
hundreds,
USD.
tens of
Yeah,
millions of
yeah.
dollars we will get back. But why would I care if I own 40% of a Rio project that they've clawed back at 5 billion pounds of copper? It's going to be shareholders will do very well.
Essentially, you're saying that are you looking to drill 9,000 meters is what you're and
Yeah, 9,000 meters is what we said. It was originally 5,000. I wanted to double it to 10. We kind of brought it down to between another. That was this. It was 6 holes for 5,000 meters. I'm looking at doing 10 to 12 holes to 9 to 10,000 meters, depending on how much money we get and how deep the holes are. The holes we're going to run around 500 to 600 meters. If you're looking for CRDs and porphyries, you've got to drill a little deeper. The 109 meters of 0.75 that Rio got in 2022 at the Smart Creek Exotic Zone target area was about 350, 400 meters.
so what you're saying is that you don't need. How much money would you have to secure before you start the drilling program? How much will it in total cost? And is the plan to sort of raise more as you drill, or
Well, we've got enough to start the program, but I want to make sure in this environment when we're being offered cash, it's not like we're going and looking for cash. People are offering us money. As you know, in the resource sector, I've raised, I stopped counting the amount of money I raised at 750 million. I'm sure it's over a billion. But only once in my career did I refuse money that was offered to me, and it was the biggest mistake I ever made in the mining space. So when institutions are offering you money, you take the money, and especially in an environment like this. This is as we're recording this today, the market has turned down from 5,400 gold to 5,000, and partially on the announcement of I think his name is I can't remember his name. The new Fed chair that they've announced, Kevin something. Anyway, once geopolitical factors, not geopolitical, but political factors play into the markets, and the political and geopolitical factors have been playing into the gold run as a hedge against the falling U.S. dollar. When that turns around, you're going to have a retraction in the gold price, and we've been calling for it. My trader, my internal trader, we have somebody who watches our market all day. We had an internal meeting. We have one every week, and he said, "I'm very nervous about these markets." He said they're very frothy, and I don't believe they'll sustain themselves over the next 5 days. And he was absolutely right. It started to break down. Now, will it continue to break down further than this? I don't know. And again, part of that is part of that. The pause in thinking is I don't know what Donald Trump's going to do. So that's the long-winded answer to the fact that if I'm being offered money in this environment and I want to increase my drill program as a result of the high grade the ultra high grade numbers we got from soil samples, I'm going to take it.
How much will it cost in total to drill 9,000 meters?
It's going to be about $3.5 million. And as I said, we've got 1.8. And some of that's not dedicated, but there's still some outstanding APs, a few $100,000. We've got to do geophysics, which is going to cost me $300,000. And that comes before the drilling. So I've got 1.5, and then and if I need 3.5, I need another $2 million. And I'm being offered, as I said, at least 4.5 million. And I, again, in this environment, because we're changing our tactics slightly here to get more drill meterage. It's the timing of us deciding to make that shift and the offer of the capital from the capital markets is serendipitous.
You added Peter Megaw. You have worked with him before, renowned CRD expert. Could you talk more about that?
Well, Peter and I, yes, have worked before. Peter is the founder, one of the original 3 or 4 founders of Mag Silver. I came in shortly after that. The founders put the company together. And when I say shortly after that, it was probably 9 months, 9 months later. So I've been working with Peter since 2004. I've been working with him in 2004 at Mag Silver to 2015. And I learned a lot from Peter. I mean, both of those guys, Dan McGinnis was the CEO, and Peter learned a lot from me on the capital market side. It was a great combination. But I learned a huge amount about geology, particularly from Peter about carbonate replacement deposits. And since we are now seeing that there's the possibility of both a porphyry and a CRD system on the project, having him as an advisor is fairly important for us. In fact, we're going down to Salt Lake City in the middle of March with our geologist, and we're meeting with Rio Tinto. Peter is considered the number 1 world's authority on carbonate replacement deposit. His doctorate, his geological doctorate, is in carbonate replacement deposits. He's considered the number 1 authority, and so he actually gives seminars on this, and we're going to go down and go through a 3-day seminar. Not only ourselves, but Rio wants to be involved as well. So we're going down to Rio's offices for 3 days in mid-March, so he can walk us through what this CRD may look like. Now, a CRD is going to be outboard of the main porphyry body. He describes it as tentacles. The CRD mineral formation is like an octopus's legs, but he said octopi don't have 1 leg; they've got 8. So you usually get a multitude of tentacles splaying off of a porphyry. Now, porphyry is going to be deeper, and the CRDs are going to be higher up in the system. So tracking, using vectoring to a porphyry using CRDs. Now, CRDs are exactly what they say they are. It's a replacement system where acidic magma makes contact with a carboniferous rock, which is limestone, a basic rock, and as they touch each other, there's a chemical reaction, an acid-base reaction, and on a molecular level, the metals drop out of the magma and replace the limestone. So it's a creeping on a molecular front basis. That's how. And when those metals drop out of the magma, typically those metals are high grade, concentrated and high grade. So CRDs are high grade, and typically so are porphyries. So we're looking for both of those.
I think one skepticism from investors is that Montana is can you build mines, essentially permit and build mines. Could you talk about that and Montana as a mining jurisdiction, especially on U.S. forested lands?
Well, Hog Haven is an Ivanhoe project, and it's moving along well. Hedleston is actually a closed mine, but it got its permits, but it's run its life of mine. Um, Black Butte is a smaller mine. It's only 2.9 million tons, but it's 2%. It's 2%, 2.5% copper. So it's economic, even though it's small. You're gonna. I own that. I want to put it in production just because you could do it fairly cheaply as a small operation, but fairly profitably. Um, and then you've got Butte. Butte is still in production. Butte started out with grades of 6-7% copper. It's now down to 3.5% copper. I think it's 0.5% copper, and it's underground. But it's still in production and still producing copper 120 years later. So it is a state that you can get permit. You can get drilling permits in 4 to 6 months on Forest Service land. How quickly we can get it into production to get your exploitation licenses, I don't know the answer to that yet. It's a little early for me.
And how far away are the closest local communities? And
Phillipsburg is about 20 miles, no, sorry, 15 miles to the southeast. It's the closest community. It's fairly small. And as I said earlier, the Butte, Montana, which is a very big city, it's second biggest city, I think, in Montana. It's 50 miles to the southeast of the project. So we're not far away from civilization and from operating towns.
if you make a discovery and you goes to a 100 million market cap, or 80 to 100 million market cap Canadian, that's a great outcome. If you don't hit, or maybe you have success, maybe your share price goes up, but it isn't a bona fide discovery. Could you essentially just give me your strategic thinking around certain outcomes, in where you don't make a discovery, and how you would be thinking then, and essentially advance the project, if you at all?
I said this earlier, the risk we take is that I've been told by geologists that no one would be surprised if this is another Butte discovery, and all the indicators in the data sets point toward this being a major porphyry at Smart Creek, but you don't know until you drill. And you're right. If we don't hit, then we'll have to be like everybody else, struggling our way through this a retracted share price and a market that doesn't believe that you can add value to this. Depends upon the numbers. If we can replicate 109 meters of 1% copper, then I believe we can move this to a company to at least $100 million market cap from 10, where it is today. Would it be an easy job? Not all that easy because I'm replicating numbers, but I've been marketing these companies for a couple of decades now, a few decades, and I'm pretty certain I can market this to get us some interest. The other way we can we can mitigate against a failed drill bit at Smart Creek is we're looking at bringing in another project to the company. Single project companies in the exploration space aren't really set up so that you can pivot to something else that may have some value. So we're looking at bringing on another project shortly, and we'll talk to the market about that soon. So you could pivot to another company, another project. It will be in the United States, and it would be copper. And it's most likely would be another Rio Tinto company, another Rio Tinto project that Dan has had access to and has been trying to get for some time. But they've been reticent. We think we can get them across the line.
So with that, where do you envision domestic metals at the end of next year?
If what the geologists tell me, I should expect is correct, by the end of you mean by the end of 2026? At the end of 2026, I expect if my geologists are correct for this company to be a $250 million market cap company. And the reason I say that is Hercules Metals hit 185 meters of 0.85% copper. If my geologists tell me I should expect 150 meters of 1 to 1%, 1.5% copper, I don't know why I wouldn't be able to either replicate or have an improved version of what Hercules was able to accomplish, especially since I have a history of taking new good discoveries and turning them into $1 billion companies. I've done it twice, and I would hope that this would be, in hockey parlance, my hat trick of wins, of scores.